As we have discussed, we live in a world with unlimited wants and needs, but limited resources to meet these wants and needs. For example, earlier during the pandemic, there was an unlimited want and need for toilet paper and other paper products. For some reason, people felt they needed to stock up on astronomical amounts of toilet paper. The companies that make the toilet paper did not have the resources to produce the amount of toilet paper consumers were looking for. The economic concept of supply and demand works to solve this issue of unlimited wants and needs with limited resources. The law of demand states that the higher the price of a good or service, the less of it consumers will demand. Therefore, when the price of something goes up, the quantity demanded, or amount consumers are willing and able to buy, goes down. However, if the price goes down, the quantity demanded, or the amount consumers are willing and able to buy, goes up. This is what we call an inverse relationship. When you think of the law of demand, think of it from the consumer's perspective. The law of supply states that the higher the price of a good or service, the more of it producers will produce. Therefore, when the price goes up, the quantity supplied, or amount producers are willing and able to supply, goes up. When the price goes down, the quantity supplied, or amount producers are willing and able to supply, goes down. When you think of the law of supply, think of it from the producer's perspective. Let's watch a quick video that explains this further.
There's only one thing you should learn in economics, it's supply and demand. Let's use the market for strawberries to help us understand this concept. Up here on the y-axis, we have the price of strawberries. Down here on the x-axis, we have the quantity of boxes of strawberries. Let's start by looking at buyers and how they respond to a change in price. If the price goes up for strawberries, then some buyers will go buy blueberries or they'll go on that all-bacon diet. The point is, they're going to buy less strawberries. And if the price goes down for strawberries, then people are going to buy more. And this is called the law of demand. When the price goes up, people buy less. When the price goes down, people buy more. On the graph, it's shown by a downward sloping demand curve. Now let's think about sellers, like the farmer in the farmer's market. If the price of strawberries goes up, then that farmer will make more profit, so he'll have an incentive to produce more strawberries. If the price goes down, then he's not going to want to produce strawberries. That's called the law of supply. And on the graph, it's shown by an upward sloping supply curve. Now let's put demand and supply together. If the price is really high at $10, then producers would like to produce a lot of strawberries, but consumers won't want to buy them. This mismatch is called a surplus. And if the price goes down for strawberries, let's say down to $1, then buyers want to buy a whole lot, but producers won't have an incentive and they'll produce very little. Again, you have a mismatch, but this one's called a shortage. And there's only one price where the quantity that buyers want to buy is exactly equal to the quantity sellers want to sell. And it's right here where supply equals demand. The price is called the equilibrium price, and quantity is called the equilibrium quantity.
Okay, so now that we have a better understanding of what supply and demand is and how they work, we are going to mark up a graph and label a supply and demand graph so that you have it for your notes and you can refer to it, because you will need to be able to interpret one of these graphs and label them. Okay, so please make sure that you have this document open in Microsoft Word. Please make sure it's opened in the desktop app. You are not working in the online version. And as I go over this graph, please label it along with me. All right, looking at this graph here on the horizontal axis, this is our horizontal axis, okay? We have quantity. This is the number of units. So this will be the number of units that are supplied, or the number of units that are demanded. And going along the side over here are vertical axes. You don't have to label this part with me, but this is the price. This is the price that the quantity is going to be demanded at, or the quantity is going to be supplied at. Now you see here we have two lines. We have a green line and a purple line. One of these lines is our supply curve, and one of these lines is our demand curve. Okay, let's look at the green line first. Looking at the green line, we notice that as the price is going up, the quantity is going up. So again, as the price is going up, the quantity is going up. And knowing what we know now about supply and demand, we know that that is indicative of the supply curve. So please type in the box supply. Okay, so the green line is supply, and the supply curve is always going to be upward facing. Now, the green line is supply. Whoops. We know that the purple line is demand. So please label that demand. And let's talk about it. So when we look at the demand curve, as the price is going down, the quantity demanded is going up. So again, as the price goes down, the quantity demanded goes up. Your demand curve is always downward facing. Okay? So remember what I said about the supply and demand curves, that you need to think about them from two different perspectives. When we think about the demand curve, we think like we're a consumer. Okay? The cheaper something is, going down, the more of it we want. Okay? Now, switch gears. I keep erasing this, I apologize. And think about the supply curve, and think about being the producer. Right? The more you can get for something, the more you're willing to supply. Okay, so that should help you when you're thinking about the two curves. That the demand curve, we think like a consumer. Supply curve, think like the producers. Now, there is a point in these two curves that intersect. Right here. And this is called equilibrium. This is when supply is equal to demand. And when we're at equilibrium, the market is said to be stable. It means the amount that consumers are looking for, the amount that consumers are willing and able to buy, is the same amount that producers are willing and able to produce. That is our equilibrium. Now there's an equilibrium price, and if we read across, we see the equilibrium price is $5, and the units is 6. All right, so our equilibrium price is $5 and 6 units. And you can just type that stuff in the box. You should be able to fit all of that in your box. So this is when the market is said to be stable. This does very rarely will happen. Okay, there's always other factors involved. We talked about, you know, when the pandemic started, how there was a high demand for paper products and toilet paper, and the producers couldn't keep up. All right, and sometimes there is extra stuff being produced, right? And there's more available than is actually demanded. And that's what these two boxes are. So when there is a bigger supply than is needed, when there is a bigger supply than is needed, we have what's called a surplus. There's extra. Okay? The best way to think about this, I always tell students, is think about October 31st, right? And October 31st, Halloween candy. All right, and October 31st, we're running at an equilibrium for the most part. What happens on November 1st? We end up with a surplus of Halloween candy. People no longer need it. People are no longer demanding it. Okay? So that's the best example for surplus. That's when you have more than is being demanded. Down here is what we call a shortage. This is what we saw happen with the toilet paper. Okay? The supply is less than what's being demanded. The producers cannot keep up with the demand, and that creates a shortage. Neither of these things are good. Neither a surplus or a shortage are good. Okay? If there is a shortage, which way does the price have to go to get to that equilibrium? It's got to go up, right? What have you noticed about prices of goods right now? They're a little more expensive because things are harder to come by. If there is a surplus, the price has got to come down to hit equilibrium. That's why Halloween candy on November 1st goes on sale. Okay, so that's just a quick overview of the supply and demand graph and how it works. Please make sure that you have labeled yours and you are familiar with all the concepts that I just covered.